You know, all those like hidden dangers you hear about in everyday things?
Hmm.
Well, we're diving into one of those today that's pretty close to home for a lot of us, I think.
Okay.
Alcohol.
Oh, wow.
We're not talking about the obvious stuff like drunk driving, but something a bit more, well, insidious, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
The link between alcohol and cancer.
Interesting.
It's something that's getting more and more attention these days, especially with, those calls to put clearer labels on alcoholic beverages.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, we've made so much progress with public awareness and campaigns around things like smoking and sun exposure.
Right.
But alcohol just seems to have flown under the radar for such a long time.
It really has. And to get to
Oh,
the bottom of this, we've gathered some pretty compelling evidence, I think. We've got scientific studies, research summaries from the National Cancer Institute, insights from Cancer Research UK.
okay.
We're talking like a full deep dive into the hard facts about alcohol and cancer.
And one of the things you'll notice right away is that the scientific consensus is like crystal clear on this. Alcohol is a carcinogen.
Whoa, okay.
It's right up there with tobacco, smoke, asbestos, you name it.
That's not something you hear every day.
Right.
So when we say carcinogen, what does that actually mean?
It means that alcohol has the potential to damage the DNA in our cells,
Okay.
which can then lead to cancer. And it's not just one type of cancer either. We're talking a pretty wide range here, including some of the most common ones like head and neck cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer, breast cancer, even colorectal cancer.
Wow, that's a scary list.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people listening, including myself, might be thinking, well, I only have a drink or two a day. Surely that can't be that bad, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very common thought.
Yeah.
That's where things get a little tricky, honestly. A little alarming. You see, while the risk definitely increases the more you drink, even one drink a day can slightly increase your risk for certain types of cancer.
Wait, really? Just one drink?
Just one drink, it's a bombshell for a lot of people.
Wow.
And this is where that whole red wine is good for you myth really starts to unravel.
Yes, the good old glass of red wine a day.
Right.
For heart health, you hear that all the time.
All the time.
But if we're saying alcohol is a carcinogen,
Hmm.
how does that square with this idea that wine in particular can be beneficial?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people have. The truth is, recent research has really challenged that notion that red wine has these magical heart protective qualities. In fact, the evidence suggests that any potential benefits are far outweighed by the increased cancer risk associated with alcohol consumption. And that's regardless of whether it's wine, beer, or liquor.
So it's the alcohol itself, not the type of drink.
Exactly.
Probably.
It all boils down to ethanol, which is the type of alcohol found in all alcoholic beverages. That's the culprit here.
Okay, so ethanol equals bad news.
Ethanol equals bad news when it comes to cancer.
But how does it actually cause cancer? What's going on inside our bodies when we drink?
Well, think of it this way. When you drink alcohol, your body has to break it down.
Right.
And one of the byproducts of that breakdown process is a really nasty chemical called acetaldehyde.
Acetaldehyde.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
It's not friendly at all. Acetaldehyde is a known toxin.
Okay.
It can actually damage the DNA in our cells, and we know that DNA damage is a key step in the development of cancer.
So we're basically introducing a harmful substance directly into our system when we drink.
Pretty much, yeah.
To make matters worse, is acetaldehyde the only way that alcohol wreaks havoc in our bodies?
It's not the only way. It can also disrupt our hormone balance,
Oh, okay.
particularly estrogen levels, which is a major risk factor for breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
DNA damage and hormone disruption.
Not a good combination. It's amazing to think that something we consume can have such a profound impact on our bodies at a cellular level.
It really is. And there's another layer to this that's particularly concerning. Alcohol can actually make the cells in our mouths and throats more vulnerable to absorbing other carcinogens,
Right.
which, this becomes especially dangerous when you factor in things like tobacco smoke.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just about to ask about the combined effects of smoking and drinking.
Oh, yeah.
I've always heard that those two habits don't mix well,
They do not.
but I never really understood why.
It's actually one of the most dangerous combinations out there,
Really?
especially when it comes to certain types of cancer. What happens is that the risks become what we call multiplicative, meaning the combined effect is far greater than simply adding the two risks together.
Multiplicative.
It is. Think of it like this. Let's say you have two matches.
Okay.
One match on its own can start a small fire.
Right.
But if you hold those two matches together and light them,
Yeah.
you get a much bigger, more powerful flame. That's essentially what's happening when you combine smoking and drinking. You're creating this like supercharged environment for cancer development,
Wow.
particularly in the mouth and throat.
That's a powerful analogy. It really drives home the point.
Yeah.
So it's not just about cutting back on one or the other. It's about addressing both habits.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're serious about reducing your cancer risk.
And it's not just about the amount you're drinking or smoking either. The way alcohol interacts with tobacco smoke can actually make your body even more susceptible to those harmful chemicals in cigarette smoke.
So that after-work drink might not seem so harmless if you're also a smoker. It really makes you think.
It does. And this is why the conversation around alcohol and cancer is so important. People need to be aware of these risks so they can make informed decisions about their health.
Speaking of awareness, that brings us to another crucial aspect of this whole issue. The call for better labeling on alcoholic beverages.
Yes.
It seems like there's a growing movement to make the risks associated with alcohol consumption more transparent to the public.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a crucial step in the right direction. You know, we've had warning labels on cigarette packs for decades.
Right.
And they've been incredibly effective in raising public awareness about the dangers of smoking.
Yeah.
It's about time we started doing the same for alcohol.
Right. It seems kind of strange that we've been so cautious about warning people about the risks of smoking. But when it comes to alcohol, it's like we've been turning a blind eye.
It's almost like there's this cultural acceptance, even celebration of alcohol,
Yeah.
that makes it harder to have those tough conversations about the risks involved.
Yeah.
But the science is clear, alcohol is a carcinogen, and people deserve to know that.
And there's actually research to back this up, right? I remember reading something from the National Cancer Institute about a study they did on public awareness of the alcohol cancer link.
Absolutely. The NCI study found that a surprisingly low percentage of people were aware that drinking alcohol increases their risk of cancer. And this was particularly true when it came to wine.
It's that wine is healthy myth again, isn't it? It just keeps popping up.
It really does. It seems like no matter how much evidence we present to the contrary, that myth just won't die. And it's not just a harmless misconception either. It can have real consequences for people's health.
I can see that.
Yeah.
If people believe that wine is somehow good for them, they might be more likely to drink it regularly, even heavily, without fully understanding the risks involved.
Exactly. And that's why clear and concise labeling on alcohol products is so important. It's about giving people the information they need to make informed choices about their health.
It makes you wonder why there's been so much resistance to this idea.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can put warning labels on cigarettes, why not on alcohol? What's
Yeah.
the argument against it?
Well, there are a few common arguments you hear. Some people argue that it's an infringement on personal freedom, that adults should be able to make their own choices without being bombarded with warnings. Others worry about the economic impact on the alcohol industry.
But isn't it the responsibility of any industry, especially one that produces a product with known health risks, to be transparent with consumers about those risks?
I would argue that it is. We're not talking about banning alcohol. We're talking about giving people the facts so they can make educated decisions about their consumption habits. And let's be honest, the alcohol industry has a long history of downplaying the risks associated with its products.
You're right. Think about all those slick advertising campaigns that associate alcohol with fun, relaxation, and success. It's hard to break through that kind of messaging.
It is. But I think the tide is starting to turn. There's a growing awareness of the harms associated with excessive alcohol consumption, and people are demanding more transparency from the industry.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
But even if we do get better labeling, how effective will it be? I mean, people see warning labels on cigarettes all the time, but they still smoke. Will it really change people's behavior when it comes to alcohol?
That's the million-dollar question. There's no guarantee that labeling alone will solve the problem, but it's a critical first step. We know from experience with tobacco that warning labels can raise awareness and prompt some people to rethink their habits.
It's about planting that seed of doubt, right? Making people stop and consider the risks before they reach for another drink.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual behavior either. Warning labels can also help shift societal norms around alcohol consumption.
How so?
Well, when you see those warnings everywhere, it starts to normalize the idea that alcohol is not this harmless, fun-loving substance it's often portrayed to be. It creates a space for more open and honest conversations about the risks involved.
It's like it takes the taboo away from talking about the negative side of alcohol, Suddenly, it's not just something we whisper about. It's right there in front of us, impossible to ignore.
Exactly, and that can have a ripple effect, influencing everything from public policy to social attitudes.
It's fascinating how something as simple as a label can potentially have such a far-reaching impact. It's like a small change that can trigger a much larger shift in how we think about and approach alcohol. But speaking of changing habits, let's say someone is concerned about their drinking and wants to reduce their risk. What advice would you give them?
First and foremost, I would say it's fantastic that they're taking their health seriously and being proactive. And there's actually good news here. Studies show that even small reductions in alcohol consumption can have a significant positive impact on your health. It's not an all or nothing proposition.
So you don't necessarily have to go cold turkey to see benefits.
Not at all. For some people, complete abstinence might be the best choice, but for others, it's about finding a level of moderation that works for them.
What does moderation look like in this context?
Well, the general guidelines recommend no more than 2 drinks per day for men and 1 drink per day for women.
But I imagine those are just averages, right?
They are. And it's important to remember that everyone's body is different, and factors like genetics, overall health, and family history can all play a role in how your body processes alcohol.
So it's really about listening to your own body and making choices that feel right for you.
Absolutely. And if you're struggling to moderate your drinking on your own, there are plenty of resources available to help. Don't be afraid to reach out to your doctor or a healthcare professional. There are also organizations like the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism that offer support and guidance.
Those are excellent resources. And I think it's important to emphasize that there's no shame in seeking help. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to take control of your health and well-being.
Couldn't agree more. It's about taking charge of your own narrative and making choices that align with your values and goals.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about empowerment, not judgment.
Exactly. And speaking of empowerment, this entire deep dive has been about giving you the knowledge you need to make informed decisions. We've explored the science, debunked some myths, and delved into some complex issues, but ultimately it's up to you to decide how you want to move forward.
It's about taking this information and making it your own. But before we wrap things up, I think there's one more crucial aspect of this whole discussion that we need to touch on: genetics. We've talked about how alcohol affects the body in general, but I'm curious about how our individual genetic makeup might play a role in our susceptibility to alcohol-related cancers.
It's a fascinating area of research, and you're right, genetics can definitely influence how our bodies process alcohol and how susceptible we are to its harmful effects.
Could you give us an example of how this works?
Sure. Think about those people who turn bright red when they drink alcohol. That's actually a genetic trait, and it's caused by a deficiency in an enzyme that helps break down alcohol.
So their bodies aren't processing the alcohol as efficiently.
Exactly. And this buildup of certain byproducts, like that nasty acetaldehyde we talked about earlier, can increase their risk of certain types of cancer, particularly esophageal cancer.
Wow, that's incredible. So even if two people drink the same amount, their genetic makeup can make a big difference in their risk level.
It's a reminder that we're all unique, and our bodies respond to alcohol in different ways. And this is why personalized medicine is becoming increasingly important. In the future, we may be able to use genetic testing to identify individuals who are particularly susceptible to alcohol-related cancers and tailor prevention strategies accordingly.
That's really exciting. It's like taking all this knowledge we've gained about alcohol and cancer and applying it on an individual level to create more targeted and effective interventions.
It's about moving beyond a one-size-fits-all approach and recognizing the complexity of this issue.
It really is amazing how much we're learning about the interplay between our genes and our environment when it comes to health. But I think what's even more remarkable is that with this knowledge comes a sense of responsibility. We're not just passive passengers in our own health journey. We have the power to make choices that can influence our outcomes.
That's a great point. And this whole deep dive has really been about empowering you, the listener, with that knowledge. We've uncovered some pretty sobering facts about alcohol and cancer risk, but we've also highlighted the fact that you have agency in this situation. You're not powerless.
Exactly. It's not about scaring people or preaching abstinence. It's about giving you the tools to make informed decisions that align with your personal values and health goals.
And those decisions might look different for everyone. For some, it might mean cutting back on their drinking. For others, it might mean choosing to abstain altogether. And for some, it might mean talking to their doctor about their individual risk factors and developing a personalized plan.
And the beauty of it is that even small changes can make a big difference. You don't have to overhaul your entire lifestyle overnight. It's about taking those incremental steps that feel manageable and sustainable for you.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources available to support you every step of the way. We've mentioned some great organizations like the National Cancer Institute and the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, but there are many others out there as well.
It's about finding your tribe, your community of support, whether it's friends, family, or professional organizations.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. This conversation about alcohol and cancer risk is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn, and new research is emerging all the time.
It's a constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah.
And it's up to each of us to stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged in this conversation.
Knowledge is power, but only if we use it. So I encourage you to continue exploring this topic, asking questions, and making choices that empower you to live a healthier, more fulfilling life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've given you the information, the insights, and the resources. Now it's up to you to take the reins and steer your own health journey. And until next time, happy diving.